Hey everyone, welcome to the Recruitment Show. We are talking about all of the major topics that people are discussing right now. Everything recruiting, future of work, and everything in between. I've got guests from all over the world to come and share their perspective and their thoughts and feelings and all of that stuff on these key topics. It might not be politically correct. It might not be what you want to hear, but it's people's perspectives, and it's important to hear people's perspectives. I love storytelling, and I think one story can illuminate a million more and really increase our understanding of these topics. So sit back, whether you're watching live or after, grab a drink, take a seat, and enjoy.
Boom. I think we're good.
I think we're good to go.
Glenn, thank you very much for joining me.
Lewis,
again,
always a pleasure, brother.
Again, every year we do a nice roundup.
The end of 2022 wouldn't be the end of a year unless you and I are chatting, right?
This is very true. This is very true. So much has happened this year.
God, man, tell me about it, right?
A lot happened in last year as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You set up your new business.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just kind of thinking about the kind of year on year. So I think this is year 3 for us. Yeah. And if we fast forward into the future, perhaps this will be rolled out into school classrooms, the chronology of the years before.
We could do a little mashup of like how it's gone, predictions,
100%,
what's
man.
come to pass.
Yeah, what we predicted, what we got right.
Yeah.
And perhaps some of the things that we were like, well, that was always a long shot anyway, right?
But I think actually this is number 4, because when we first did it, it was in person.
Oh my God, yeah.
In person, across a table with the mic in front of our face and the whole thing. And then this is the first time that we've come back to a live
100%.
podcast. So in the studio in Shoreditch, and it feels great.
Oh, it feels amazing, mate.
Way different, isn't it?
100%, and so good that you're so well organised and remembering these things, right? This is what a dynamic partnership's about, right?
I was just thinking, like, the first ones were face to face, and then suddenly everything went virtual, which was great because you get to podcast with people that aren't in your city and not 100%. In your country and stuff, which is amazing. So that will continue, but this stuff here is great because you feed off each other. You got to sit awkwardly, can't move, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Reachable for your coffee.
The coffee and stuff. So looking back, then let's look back and then let's look forward. And there's a lot of crazy things happen. So, but in terms, I think we started the year with this, and probably it's the whole of 21 too. But the Great Resignation, the Great Rehire. There's way more jobs than there are people, and I think that's still true, despite the layoffs in tech and things like that. But how have you found sourcing this year?
So okay, so that's a big subject area which I think we'll get to. If we want to focus on sourcing, this year I think has gone as predicted. So it's been challenging because ultimately I think the talent that every business is looking for is essentially gone, or those individuals have so many options. Yeah. It's quite. So if you look at verticals like sales, product design, finance, all of these areas, all of these verticals, I think there is such a high demand, and that's linked to obviously the pandemic and what happened and what businesses made in terms of decisions then and how that impacted the market. So I think in terms of timelines for sourcing, if you're looking at kind of metrics, I mean, typically time to hire has increased considerably. I think you'd be pre-pandemic, you'd be looking somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks time to hire. Now that's in excess of 12, 15. Really? Yeah, it's really gone up. And I'm talking from the prospect or the position of startups and scale-ups, essentially.
Yeah.
So within that space, when you're building a talent brand and you're really trying to kind of just first attract and engage that talent, your actual time to hire is longer because you've got a lot more upfront storytelling.
Interesting. So what's bits got longer? The finding, the sourcing, engaging people?
The finding is the same. It's the engagement piece. It's actually getting individuals to respond, to listen first and foremost to kind of your proposition, your story, what that journey for that business has been and what it's likely to be going forward. That actual piece now has actually extended, and as we both appreciate, right? I mean, LinkedIn is awash with kind of recruiters in mailing and trying to engage talent. And I think to stand out now, to really stand out and really kind of just get a response, just get a connection request, just get somebody to acknowledge your message, you have to be more creative. I think you have to be more transparent.
Yeah.
But equally, you have to be more patient.
Interesting. So what do you think of the voice notes and the video stuff people are sending around? Like, hey, I've got this great job. Call me. 0800 50.
Yeah. I don't know quite how that's working for others. You know, I mean, I think if I received a voice note like that, firstly I'd be quite amused, but actually then I'd be thinking, is this relevant to me?
The amount of stuff I get.
Yeah.
I mean, and the weirdest is like they send these sales emails.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I got one 6th message, clearly automated.
Yeah.
I can't believe you've not got back to me. It's so rude, so disrespectful. It's like, you contacted me, I've never even responded.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be like, look, I'd appreciate if if you were offended, had you actually sent this email. But I know it's automated, and that's actually increased in my experience. It's increased a lot more, and I think people have tried to
the automation part.
Yeah, the automation, 100%. Yeah, with pictures, GIFs, kind of things like, oh, this will be my last message to you. I appreciate that. You're probably not interested. You're just like, look, if you'd actually thought about me as a person that you wanted to engage with, you probably could have got a response in that first email. If you really thought about it, if it was really personalised. But actually what you've done is you just stuck me into a database, and I'm probably one of X amount of 100 people that you're trying to contact.
Yeah.
And that's not going to really engage me or even make me want to respond to you. To sort of say, look, I'm not interested. You're just like, oh, it's automated. I'm not.
Did you think that that's one of the reasons why the sourcing is the outreach, let's say, is taking longer because people are getting sold to more?
Yeah.
Or is it the fact that there's just so many available vacancies?
Yeah.
That people are they've got so much choice.
Combination of both, really do. I mean, I think the number of opportunities that individuals, like say sales, finance, product design, that they've got available to them if they choose to explore them, because we're kind of talking here along the lines of an active market or an active number of talent that's actually looking, which is reducing, and actually the passive market is actually growing. So if you think of it in that context, you've definitely got to work harder to attract that kind of passive talent. And I think in terms of the number of vacancies linked to the kind of outreach piece, for me, you've really got to double down on personalization. Yeah, that's the key for me. And we've done a lot of stuff this year to try and just find out what that is, what that looks like, what kind of engagement can we get by telling personal stories, by really doubling down on personalization, by being very transparent around kind of what we're trying to achieve, and not trying a whole kind of drip feed marketing approach.
No, I like that. The storytelling part is also
cool, man.
Massively important, I think. Which,
dude, trust me, during the summer, the amount of people that got message from me about my new hobby of sea swimming. Seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I was just like, look, okay, cool. This is what I'm doing at the moment. It's really great for me. I find it really invigorating. It links into how I approach my day to day. And it may polarize, right? Some people be like, what the hell is this guy sending me, messages around his sea swimming? But some people actually came back, and it was a growing percentage over time that were like, look, this is just different. I just wanted to respond because it was different and it was more personal. And actually it made me laugh.
Love that.
So,
So what is your sea swimming? Just is this a new... This is your routine that you...
Yeah, mate. I mean, I'm not hardcore, right? This is summer only.
Oh, right.
I'm not one of those people kind of...
You're not breaking the ice.
No. This is purely summer swimming, right? 3 times a week in the mornings. It's the super way to start the day. Really, really relaxing. And the beach is like 5 minutes from where I live. So why wouldn't I take advantage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So rounding off on the sourcing. So companies hiring now. Mm-hmm. And then let's say we can predict what happens next year, but had to be a lot more thoughtful around how they find, attract and engage people this year. The advertising didn't work so much, especially if you're trying to look for people that are in high demand. Mm-hmm. Like the talent are in high demand, so way more jobs than people.
Yep.
You've got to be more more direct in your sourcing, personalized storytelling, and so forth. Have we ended the year the same, do you think? So obviously in the papers, a lot of it's all negative, but it's all tech layoffs, maybe financial services. Do you think that's true? I.e., is that representative of the market, or do you still think there's way more jobs overall than people?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting you say that. So working with startups and scale-ups, they perhaps see these mass layoffs from the the kind of big tech giants as an opportunity to hire talent. But in actual fact, I think the amount of available talent is still the same. And if you think about those individuals that are kind of coming onto the market, they will invariably have multiple choices in terms of opportunities. So it's still competitive. Yeah. It doesn't mean to say that because there's an increase of available talent, the competition will decrease. It will remain the same. Yeah. And I think in terms of, if we think about kind of the sourcing piece, which you said around kind of job descriptions, I think seriously, job descriptions, man, why do we even bother? Seriously, I mean, it just kind of, for me, it's one of those sort of parts of the process that everybody is like, okay, that's a stable part of the process. We need to document exactly what we want this person to do. But trust me, make it a small, quick part of the process, because it is not going to be the thing that attracts somebody to your business.
100%.
It's probably the thing they're going to sense check before they interview with you, just to make sure. But it's not, nobody's sitting there going, oh my God, this is an amazing job description.
Well, I find it
blown my mind.
The always classic was like, it's always a tool for rejection. But I always, you send it and someone's like, oh, I'm not sure I've got this. People start to self-reject themselves. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I've got this. I'm not sure if I've got that. Oh, I don't know about this. You start to focus on, and actually it's not necessarily, a lot of these jobs change quick. They evolve, and it's way more about the people, I think. Like the story, the people you're going to be working with and stuff like that. So
there's one thing from this year, and, you and I, we get a lot of kind of rec tech sold to us, right? But there's one particular, I won't name it, but there's one particular piece of software we use this year. And the one thing that I really like about it is it allows you to see who's shown interest in your job. So it gives you the opportunity to actually look at that person's profile and encourage them to apply.
Oh, nice.
And I think that in itself, that's really been a big plus point for us this year, in so much as people have, they've looked at a job, I haven't got time to apply. And then typically it just goes off their radar, right?
Yeah. But is that similar? That sounds a little bit like the, hey, you've left something in your basket. Do you want to come and buy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. The beauty of it is it allows us to talk to why we would want them to apply.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's kind of like why we want you to think about this opportunity. It gives us an opportunity. It allows us to offer an introductory call. So it's kind of like, okay, cool. Look, we appreciate that maybe not all the information that you've read that's accessible is ticking all your boxes. Let's have a 20-25 minute intro chat, and let me just give you more information. And that's actually been really super powerful, actually.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff that people are using. I think, I don't know about you, but if I look ahead now, on the sourcing part, on availability of talent and things like that. I'm an optimistic guy anyway, but I think I'm positively optimistic for what is coming. I.e., I think some countries will be in recession. Maybe the tech stuff, the financial services, I think they'll start rehiring. Maybe end of the first quarter, middle of next year. I think it's going to be a good year. But I think for companies hiring, they need to don't get caught in there's way more people. And and we don't have to work as hard. I think you just need to continue all the great stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
The storytelling, the tech, whatever you're using.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this year, obviously, we had all the kind of stories out of kind of venture capital, right, around telling their portfolio companies not to hire so quickly, kind of run lean, etc., etc. Now, I guess that's probably sound advice if you're a VC looking at your portfolio companies. If I'm a portfolio company and I've just turned the tap off in terms of hiring this year, basically what I've said is I've completely taken my talent brand out of the kind of social domain. So, essentially nobody really knows, are we hiring? Have we hired? You've just switched the tap off. And then those are probably the companies coming into 2023. They'll be like, okay, cool, let's start recruiting again. And then they'd be like, oh, why is it so hard?
I've got to say, my big bugbear this year has been people's behaviour towards other people when they've been hiring. And I thought people would have learned their lesson over COVID. Way too many companies cut too deep and too quick over COVID. And they start to scramble to rehire. And in this tech VC startup kind of world, I've seen so much bad behaviour. And some of the large firms too. I mean, we can speak about Twitter and Meta, and there was who was it? Was it what were they called? It was the home company, Better.com. We talk about Better.com. Have to talk about Better.com. There was just so much bad behaviour, and the midst, like the techie VC backed stuff. I just had stories of, like, you know, people rescinding offers, people about to turn up. Sorry, we can't pay you. Just the behaviour was like
crazy, right?
like dreadful, dreadful, and people will remember.
100%.
Like, you remember how people make you feel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we came out of the pandemic, or, you know, kind of starting to come out of the pandemic, I think probably one of the most consistent questions I got asked is, how did you treat your people during that period of time? Whether it be lockdown, you know, kind of, did you offer them furlough, you know, kind of, how did you kind of keep them engaged? How did you look after their kind of mental health and well-being? Now, if you haven't got a credible answer for that, that's a big red flag to somebody, right? Because it ultimately says, well, if this happens again, surely you're going to default to the behaviour you displayed previously, because you haven't clearly learned any lessons. So it's that kind of behaviour, which somehow was justified because of the complete flux of what was going on globally. I mean, you just, in hindsight, you can't justify that. No,
I mean, how do you know, we had firms in the US as 2-week notice periods. And I think was it Coinbase? I think.
Yeah.
So they'd offered someone a job, a couple hundred people signed the contract, resigned. In the 2 weeks between them starting, I'm really sorry, economic conditions, you're going to have to rescind your offer. I mean, you know, so the other thing for me, if you're running a business, you've got to know what your cash flow.
Yeah, I was
going to say, you can't afford to hire. Don't hire.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, economic conditions have changed the way that we're looking at hiring. You just kind of like,
you know,
surely.
I mean, I hate to break it to you, but more people doesn't equal more money.
Yeah,
it means more cost.
Yeah,
all of this stuff. So, for me, if you're running a business, which I do, and you do, just keep a handle on where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. Be respectful to the fact that if you don't have people and a team, you basically probably have, depends, a tech platform, and that's it. There's no growth without the people that support that business and move it forward. And I think it's, I don't know, like I say, there was some really extreme ends of the scale, let's be fair, really poor behaviour during that period of time. But I also saw examples of very good behaviour, you know, really, you know, kind of responsible leadership. So thankfully there is that balance. But unfortunately, you know, with the press the way it is these days, you tend to get highlighted the negative behaviour more than the positive behaviour.
Yeah, you do. And also, you don't quite know exactly what happened. I mean, in some scenarios you do. I mean, the Better.com guy, for those that don't know, and I'm pretty sure that was this year, his camera angle was like from the floor to his, I mean, it was just like an odd camera angle. And he said, hey, if you're on this call, I'm really sorry. You're going to be made redundant. Yeah. You know, 1,000 people or whatever, which is crazy. And then we have Elon Musk and Twitter scenario, which I think is quite an interesting scenario. Because on the one hand, and I'm going to put a few different scenarios here, but you know, he's quite a Marmite kind of guy.
Oh yeah.
You know, like he's, you know, he's got Asperger's. Yeah. So typically low emotional intelligence, and he's got a particular style, very creative. You know, done incredible stuff. But then, you know, by all accounts, the way he's conducted his redundancies has been questionable. Yeah. What I find quite interesting is that, you know, he comes out with, you know, if you want to come work at Twitter, great, but it's 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, whatever, you know, 20 hours a day. So like, I quite like the fact that you know exactly where you stand with him. Yeah, I get, that's my...
Yeah. Look, I take a point around him as an individual. I think he's created some really innovative businesses. I think he is a kind of lightning rod and a focal point, but surely he's not allowed to just run Twitter without a leadership team, right? Surely they have influence and an opinion on how Twitter should be run and kind of how the leadership should look. So ultimately, this kind of 7 days a week, 7 days a week, the multiple hours, etc., etc. Surely somebody would be tapping him on the shoulder and going, look, that's probably not going to land that well. Given that, we've just come out of a pandemic, a lot of people now are looking for hybrid working, they're looking for more flexible work-life balance. Appreciate where you're coming from, but that's probably not going to attract the top talent in a highly competitive market. And with respect, I'm not entirely sure what kind of social credibility Twitter as a brand has now. I think, because of its journey, and the same with perhaps Facebook, etc., the kind of real zenith of when they were like the gold star, everybody wanted to work for them. I think that's waned now.
Do you think that's waned across the board?
Yeah, for sure.
On all of the different social platforms.
I think people almost see those businesses now as training grounds for better things. So go there,
brand name.
Yeah, exactly. Go there, perhaps 12, 18 months, 24 months, something along those lines, and then go on to something else that you can actually have an impact in. And I think that's one of the things post-pandemic is people want to feel the impact of what they deliver on a day-to-day basis. They want to see their impact actually, develop an outcome and actually really influence a business. And then that links into the mission as well, right?
So do you think then so they've made redundancies, there's all of this stuff that seems like almost everyone doesn't like, but do you think it will really affect Twitter specifically's ability to attract talent next year? Or maybe to your point, I know I'm getting is going to be a good brand name on my CV, and maybe we can talk about whether it is a good brand name on the CV, and maybe that will help them get better jobs moving forward in other tech firms and stuff.
I think they'll continue to attract talent. It'll just be a very different type of talent. I think if people see the relationship between employee and employer as transactional, they'll approach it accordingly. So it's kind of like, okay, cool. What am I getting in exchange?
Yeah.
And perhaps those individuals that are seeking something more creative and mission-led won't be attracted to Twitter.
Yes.
And the irony is those are probably the people that Twitter want. Those are the type of people that Elon Musk wants in his business, right?
Yeah.
So they will continue to attract talent, but I think it'll be a different type of talent.
Yeah.
And the actual, let's say, the social contract between the employee and the employer will be very different.
Yeah. That's interesting because you do, when I speak with folks, you do see people, like their view on this is quite different. It's, either it's I want to work with somewhere with real purpose and meaning and things, and that's what's talked about a lot. And there's a lot of folks that really, that's what they want. It's like the work's the work, you do it with matters and things like that. And then you've got a load of folks that are just mercenary. Like, well, let's use tech as an example, but, like developers don't stay in roles too long. They move quite a lot. They go for bumps. They're doing the same work. They don't really mind where it is. They get paid a bit more. And so there's all those folks as well. So it's going to be interesting to see.
And equally as well, the brand affiliation you're talking about, kind of having Twitter on your CV, Google, Facebook, etc., etc. If you have that brand name on your CV during a period where perhaps their PR and kind of the general kind of social view of those brands is not particularly healthy, is that a plus or is that a detractor? You know what I mean?
Great point. And that will be dependent on who is maybe trying to hire you or who you're trying to work for next. Yeah. Because there's this whole thing of, I talk a lot about hiring for potential over pedigree.
Yeah.
But this, which I think is, I'm all in on that. Find someone with potential, find someone who's motivated, trustworthy, and you can just train the rest, right? But still, loads of people hire on pedigree. They're like, oh, they're from Google, must be great.
Yeah.
From Twitter, must be great.
It's about who has most influence over that conversation. So I had a chat with a startup founder a few weeks back, and his view was, well, our kind of VC, our investors are like, look, you need to hire X pedigree of types of individuals, X consultants, to your point, kind of like individuals that have gone through a journey or have got a big ticket kind of brand on their CV.
Yeah.
My counter to that is, well, that's their view because actually they want reassurance in their investment. From a founder's perspective, you want growth in your business. And actually what you probably want is individuals that can grow in your business and continue to contribute as you grow.
Yeah.
that's otherwise you're in this cycle of probably replacing senior level individuals on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of counterbalance. How much influence and say do you have on how your business is kind of going to hire going forward versus obviously your responsibilities as a kind of company with investment and a kind of board of investors.
But I think I completely agree, and I think it's safer.
It's perceived to be safer.
Exactly, yeah, perceived. It's like, oh, who have you hired? I hired John from Google. Oh, cool. John doesn't work out.
Yeah.
CEO comes round. Oh, Google. Okay, fine. You know, if it's like, John, from where?
Yeah.
From you know, like XYZ. You know, like Hypergrowth down the road. Okay, but so who? You know, why didn't you? So I think leadership in these companies need to really give permission almost and encourage people. Because if you're a middle manager and you're hiring a junior developer or something, you don't want to be the next one out the door. You don't want to make a bad hire. And hiring is a little bit like risk management almost, right? It's like, you know, it's not an exact science. You're never sure someone's going to work out. You just try and do the best you can to make the best decision. Yeah. And I think with the brand names, people get sucked into to safer hire. And I think people need to get away from that.
100%. I think another thing I've seen this year is volume hiring for kind of startups and scale-ups. So this view that fill the pipeline with enough talent and then it filters down to the 1 or 2 or 3 individuals you want to hire, which probably would make sense in a market awash with available talent and a market that's not so competitive. That pipeline starts to look pretty skinny when you can only get 3 or 4 or 5 people into that process. So the expectation of the kind of founder co-founder is, we'll have, you know, double-digit figures of people interested. Let's not invest in our talent brand because we just need to push them to the top of the funnel, and then we'll get the result out the bottom. And you're just kind of like, you really don't get this market. And I get that whole kind of Silicon Valley view of, you know, kind of build, rinse, repeat, all that sort of thing. But it doesn't work in this talent market. It probably didn't previously, but it definitely doesn't now.
Yeah. I think a lot of founders, you know, it's like, hey, I've raised like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. Everyone's going to want to come work for me. And you're like, well, you know, and they all think they can do recruiting better than a recruiter. You know, I hired a couple of people last year. I mean, you know, I know it's fine. You know, just find me a few fakes, and then suddenly I think recruiting's way harder than raising money. I mean, raising money the last few years was relatively easy for people because there's so much of it around. Yeah, you know, and it was you could raise, and then suddenly you've got to attract people to actually work with you, and it isn't good enough just to say, oh, we've got a great product and we've raised like 5 million. You're like, great, well, so is every other firm I've just spoken to.
I think there's this disconnect between what a company of founders, co-founders see as their kind of brand and, you know, kind of obviously the recognition they get from fundraising, et cetera, and they think that translates to their talent brand, and they think that translates to, you know, kind of the talent market, and it doesn't. It's a completely different story you need to tell when you're attracting talent to your business. And if you have no talent brand, you are starting from ground zero. Yeah, you know, quite literally. And I think there's perhaps because of the fact that a lot of startups and scale-ups get a lot of referrals in that early kind of stage. Yeah. You know, they get a lot of referrals. They're like, okay, cool. Well, now we can go out to the market because we've exhausted our network. That should be equally as easy. Yeah. And then when they hit the market, they're just like, okay, cool. This is not what we expected. And then suddenly all these forecasts they have around kind of growing their business suddenly start to stagger. And then suddenly recruitment becomes like the key focus area. Yeah. And then they default to volume because they think volume is going to be quicker than actually really personalized human-centered experiences. And then when volume doesn't happen, they finally get to a point where if they really lean in and they really focus on the human-centered experience, that's when they get great hires.
Yeah, but you're right. Great points. And also, I think when people start businesses like that, they don't realize it's necessarily about the people. I.e., like, you don't quite, you know, I've got a great product, I've got great code, I've got great tech, but your business is people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you're the leader, and your job is to attract great folks, nurture them, develop them, retain them, you know, all of that stuff. And if all of that is working well, then suddenly you build a great culture, more people want to kind of come work, and all the other stuff starts to happen. But I don't think people quite realise.
Yeah.
It's just, you know.
But to your point, right? Hiring's easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of like, it's just such a straightforward process. Not to mention the fact that there's a whole industry dedicated to hiring. And that's why if hiring was that easy, you and I, we wouldn't have businesses.
Yeah.
Because everybody would be like, okay, cool, this is how it's done, nice and easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
My message for people now, I mean, for that is, I mean, there's not always more sweets in the sweet shop. And if you see someone great with potential, 100%. Hire them, develop them, nurture them, train them, be nice to them, kind to them, etc.
100%. I mean, I think there was those kind of old school views of, oh, I need to see 3 people before I can make a final decision. Oh man, seriously, if you're still holding on to that, you're probably going to have an open vacancy for a long time.
Yeah.
To your point, it's like if you see you've interviewed somebody that you really think can add value, make them an offer. Because waiting for somebody to compare them to, or another 2 people before you make a final decision, is actually probably only just going to impact the time to hire.
Yeah. And when I hear someone I'm not really sure, do the upfront bit. Like, why are you hiring? What job are they going to do?
Yeah.
You know, be clear of like what you're looking for, and then when you see them, you go for it.
Yeah.
You know.
And equally as well, if you get to a point where somebody's been through a succession of interviews and you're still not sure, well, your interview process doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're not asking the right questions, right? You're not delving into the experience or trying to understand that individual. Because, like I say, if you're 2-3 interviews and you're like, I don't know, what have you been doing? What does this process serve to actually deliver? You know what I mean?
Yeah. The thought, there's some free thought up front.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because again, like, you know, it's true. Like, a lot of people think recruiting's easy, and you're in this market and it's tough. And I think it's still going to be tough for 2023. Just put some time into preparing.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you're really at a loss, jump on this wonderful AI, this chatbot, you know, the GPT-3.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, go GPT-3, and you can put in what is a great interview process, or give me some great interview questions, and it will come up with some really cool stuff. I mean,
to be fair, that information was probably available before.
It's all online. Yeah.
It's just it's just how quickly it was delivered. You'd have to do a fair bit of research just to kind of really collate a decent interview experience and process. But it's a starting point, right?
Yeah.
At least it's a starting point.
Yeah. Where are you on, or what are you seeing on work from home, fully remote, fully office based?
Yeah.
Are you seeing a variety of stuff? Like, well, where are people landing now?
Largely remote.
Fully remote.
Yeah, with the option to go into a kind of a workspace, or I prefer to call it kind of workspace, or just a collaboration space as opposed to an office. Office feels so old school, you know. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing individuals want that remote first with the option to.
And this is in the startup
and scale-up space. Yeah, 100%. And I think, well, I mean, certain companies have kind of defaulted back to, okay, cool, you know, we want kind of a couple of anchor days per week in the office, because perhaps given the choice, some people might only come in once a month, once every couple of months, and the leadership just want that opportunity to kind of catch up and have those kind of almost like spontaneous conversations. But in the main, I think remote first is kind of what I'm seeing largely.
Interesting. I am seeing similar. For larger firms, I've seen more variety.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so like mid-size and large global firms with like real estate.
Yeah, I was going to say lengthy lease.
Yeah.
that they can't get out of.
Like, there's a lot that have real estate, and you want people in your real estate.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of that. Like, people are doing maybe on average 3 days a week in the office, or so. Like, I've seen a lot of larger firms where they have a policy, but then when you go into the teams, the individual leader. It seems to be deciding their own policy, depending on the needs of their team. You know, some need to be in more than others and stuff. So I'm seeing quite a variety. I saw a lot of people leave when they were mandated to come back in.
Yeah.
That happened this year. Like, I had a lot of folks that were just like, oh, they're mandating me back in. I'm great at home. I don't want to come in. I'm out.
Yeah.
And because there were quite a lot of roles available, I mean, people just started to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of, you know, when you've been working home for, you know, on and off for the best part of kind of a couple of years or so, you can see where the value is there. And let's be fair, you know, say, case in point, commuting into London, that doesn't get any more fun, right?
Unless you listen to our podcast.
Well, exactly that, yeah. I mean, opportunities do, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't change, right? And I think people are citing, you know, the kind of reasons for that is like, well, hour in, hour out, plus, you know, walking either side, you know, that's like a couple of hours, couple of half hours.
Yeah.
I could really be quite productive in that time.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So it makes good sense, right?
I saw a great cartoon. It was Randolph speaking with Father Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And if you saw it, and Randolph said they all want to work at home this year. What are we going to do? You know, maybe call Amazon or something to deliver the presents. But I think in this conversation, it's worth remembering that a lot of people have to go in. So if you are lucky enough to be able to have the conversation of, oh, you know, come in a few days, fully remote, I think you've got to really count yourself lucky, because it's you know, it's quite a privilege, I think, to be able to choose where to work from.
Yeah, I think,
You know, I think that's a good.
Yeah, so to your point, you're kind of talking about obviously the medical profession, hospitality,
Yeah,
etc. That you know don't have a choice; they have to be present in their kind of workspace, in their office per se, because that's the nature of their job. I think in knowledge work, because you can offer that flexibility, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Because if you're really thinking about, you know, kind of outcomes and output, if people do their best work, you know, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 days a week from home, and then 1 day a week you see them, and it's more kind of catch-ups and all that sort of thing, well, surely the output is the key thing you're looking at, right?
Yeah, outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. I mean, we've gone, and I know you have too, but I'll talk about my experience, and we are fully remote now. We used to have an office in London. We hired a lot of people over the last couple of years, but not just anywhere in the world, like for ourselves. I don't care where they are. And we got rid of the office, so everyone's at home. Some people have like memberships to co-working spaces and stuff. We do like a UK meetup, European meetup, US, global. So we've also have face-to-face stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
But I've got to say it's been great. Like people's output is way better. We've had a great couple of years. Touch wood. I mean, you never know, but it's been really good. And people, and to lead in a firm like that when you're not used to it, it takes a while to adjust. And then it's weird. Like so now I just give people my trust off the bat. You know, let's go. And then you have ways of measuring people's output, performance, and stuff. And then you go from there.
I think you made a really key point there, which is trust from the beginning, right? You're employing individuals that understand what their role and responsibilities are, what the outcomes are expected of them, and you trust them to shape their week and structure their week to deliver those outcomes. Now, clearly, if they don't, then there's a conversation to be had. But equally, starting from a point of trust is always gonna bode well, right?
Oh yeah. The old school is like, obviously you want to come work for me, and with the attracting talent, and I'm paying your salary, and I don't trust you. In fact, I think you're gonna take the piss. So that's my starting point. So I want you in.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you've got to be an 8:30, and you're like, oh, where's Glenn? Late again. Damn, all of this kind of, thing. And then it's snowing outside. Oh, I bet they're not going to be in. You have all of this kind of, and obviously, like, just because people are in an office doesn't mean they're working. I mean, the amount of people online shopping probably.
And surfing social media.
Surfing social media. You do that in the office. You could do it from a home office. So early on in the year, it was like the conversation was returning to work. And I think people had to remember that people were working at home.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So it's return to the office, not return to work.
100%. It wasn't as if they're sitting at home like on a pseudo holiday, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these companies would stop operating if everybody did that.
Yeah.
If the output really dipped, then the company would just suffer, right?
Yeah. Now I think on the other side, I mean, there are people that do not work at home, or there are people that just their performances aren't great, whether in the office or home. So you have this whole raft of people that just whether they're in the wrong job. We had this like quiet quitting kind of thing this year. you know, where people probably, and a mouse jiggler. You hear about the old mouse jiggler?
No, not at all.
Oh, so I mean, quiet quit. If you were quiet quitting, and you had a mouse jiggler, it's probably time to look for a new job. The quiet quitting was, I know a few different definitions, but it was probably, you know, you're doing a job where you're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
But bare minimum, right? And some people were like, well, that's fine, you know. But I think for me, quiet quitting was like, you're not really enjoying the job and you can't be bothered, right? The mouse jiggler is this little pad you put your mouse on. It vibrates, and whoever's looking at your time spent online, it seemed like you were still online. £12 from Amazon, and a good stocking filler probably for someone.
Mate, that is impressive. I mean, I was familiar with the quiet quitting piece. I just want to take it back to that point around, you know, some people don't perform particularly well, maybe working from home, etc. Your responsibility as a leader is to figure out and then create the environment and the circumstances for that person to deliver their best, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as much as they turn up with their skills, experience, knowledge, and that desire to want to deliver, you have a responsibility as a leader to sort of create that environment, whether that's, you know, the hybrid working or whatever it is, to allow them to really support them to deliver on their outcomes and output. So
100%. Following on from that, I think this year for me has also been a year of encouraging people to take ownership of their own life and their own career. I call it being the CEO of your life.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's definitely important for leaders to do that, and I do my best to do that. I want to provide the right environment, platform where people can do their best work and all this kind of stuff. But I think if you're an individual, you've got to take charge of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait for your employer to give you the training opportunity. Don't wait for, you got passed over for promotion, or, you know, you want to transition into a new career. I think just, you know, take charge of yourself. Don't use like external stuff as an excuse.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. So much as there's so much information available to you, you can have a very clear idea of what your career path could look like. And then it's really about your leader and you kind of setting the circumstances or the safe space to talk about what you want going forward and help you shape that. So if you have an idea or a concept of what that looks like, then your leader can kind of lean in and perhaps create opportunities for you to fulfill that learning on that curve you want to go on. But I think you're right. I think that it's got to be a 50-50 split in so much as that individual is going to want to move their career forward.
Yeah. This is important. I think this is a big trend I've seen this year. Something that you've done, something that I've done, something that I think there'll be more than 50% of people in the US are going to be doing this, which is freelance work. Or whatever you want to call it, freelance. Some people call it gigs. People don't like the word gig. However you call it. But the trend is the traditional employment contract is changing. And a lot of people, Gen Z, actually all age ranges, are changing the way they're looking at work. You've just set up your business. You've also been a contractor, freelance, however you want to, however you describe it, for a while. Any insights into people that, and a lot of people are going to be doing this. So what are your thoughts on it all?
First thing, in the first year, plan better. Don't go into it blindly, because you'll end up partway through thinking, where am I on this journey? That's certainly what I found in the first year. And then I think it's for me, it's dependent on the service you want to provide. Build a network. That's the key thing. First and foremost, build a network. Make sure you nurture that network, because that's ultimately going to be the source of any work that you get. Equally, know what you can deliver. Don't overpromise, because there is a temptation when you're an independent that lots of work comes your way, and you just think through fear or the chance that it may not come again, you just say yes, and that's never a wise choice, because then you're overstretched and you're one person. And equally, plan for that tipping point. If you're starting to see X amount of work coming in consistently that is over and above what you can fulfill, there is an opportunity there to scale as a business. So you move from being an independent into actually a business, which is what I did. And it was.
At what point did you you think about it consciously, or did it just evolve like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that it was planned. It wasn't. It was quite literally. I started to see that point around, more work coming in, more referrals coming in, and I was like, I want to work with these people and their businesses, and the only way I can do that is by scaling and actually bringing individuals in to work along with me. So yeah, there was. I think for me, it was about year 3 where I started to see that consistently, and I was like, okay, cool, I need to do something about that. But when you're an independent, it's kind of like, yeah, when have I got time?
Because you're essentially as independent, you're selling your time.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, right. Yeah, so you're looking to fulfill that kind of promise that you've made. So yeah, you always have to create the space to think about moving from one person to being a kind of business, and then ultimately, what does that mean? Because when you've been an independent, you're essentially selling yourself and what you can deliver. When you create a business, you're creating services to then sell. And that's slightly different narrative, because you can't just put yourself in front of everything. It's more about the kind of story of the business then. So it's been an interesting journey, man. Seriously, I've loved it. And I mean, it's a real buzz. But it's kind of one of those things where some stuff ends up being quite planned, some just happens by nature of kind of organic growth.
Yeah.
But realizing that and then actually trying to seize the opportunity is probably the key thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. When I set up my business, I read a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Robert Gerber. Would really recommend anyone reading it, because I think the thing, just following on from your point, is when you're on your own, you haven't got a business, it's yourself, right? You're a sole trader, and you're doing the sales, the marketing, the HR, the finance, the delivery, whatever. It's just everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they fall into a trap a little bit of working in the business and forget to work on the business.
Yeah.
So, working in your business, if you're a baker, is you're baking the cakes. You're in your shop, you're baking and you're selling the cakes, and that's it. Working on your business is right. Oh, maybe, you need a baker. Excuse me. Maybe, you need an HR person, finance, marketing.
Yeah.
So when you start to hire people, then you start creating a business.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they fall into this trap, and whether people want to admit it or not, I think it's true, is you're working longer and harder for less money than you were doing before.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
People don't realise that.
Yeah, you suddenly pivot from taking kind of all the income to then thinking, okay, cool, now I'm investing in a business and people. And yeah, I mean, there's a period where you change from an independent to a business, and then that business grows. And in that growth period, it's still not sustainable. It's still not self-sustaining. You might have a degree of kind of leveling in terms of what's coming in, pays the wages, pays the bills, but there's not a massive amount of profit on that. So you've got to be patient and plan for that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you just think, I'll flip to a business and suddenly we'll be super profitable, it doesn't often work like that.
I also want to say that you don't have to want to sell your business.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because I constantly, the few things people always ask me, like when I set up, they were like, if most people's businesses fail after year 1. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. And then hit year 2, most businesses fail after year 1. I'm like, great. And then they're like, how many people do you have and when do you want to sell?
Yeah.
So again, like, more people doesn't equal more money.
Yeah.
I just don't get sucked in, and, if it makes sense. So like for you, you get a lot of requests, and you probably started to have to pass on business. And you're like, well, if I get another recruiter, they can, and you start to build. The exit thing, let me just, I want to put a point on this because it annoys me a little bit, is, it actually annoys me a lot, but with because a lot of the stuff you see on social media in tech, now most people have to remember that tech businesses make no money. They re-raise every 18 months, and they have to have an event. So an IPO or a PE or someone buys them. And the whole goal is scaling. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the profit a lot of the time, which is why a lot of these firms got into trouble with these rescinding offers, I think. And then they have to have an event. With some businesses like ours, like service businesses, like you can make money and have a really good time from day one. From day one, you don't have to want to sell. So, in fact, my friend Lee put it so beautifully. I mean, I've never been able to answer the question really well when people ask me. And my friend Lee, 𝐫𝐞𝐜𝐫𝐮, Global Street Art, he's got a great business, and he's like, my exit strategy is take me out in a body bag.
Ah.
And I think that's a great
Well,
answer.
I have something similar to that, but not as extreme. So through a kind of culture project we were doing internally, and you say, culture project, there's only 4 of you. But you know what? You lay the foundations of that early. And part of that kind of process was kind of sharing the vision for the business. And for me personally, I would like to see, never mind the job spec, go beyond me. So ultimately, everybody has a shot at being CEO. And my responsibility is to see that business continue to grow, but equally create my succession plan.
Yeah.
And that's my hope for the business. So it continues to grow, and others will look at that as an opportunity for them to grow.
Yeah.
Because I see it in other businesses where, the CEO or the co-founder becomes a bottleneck. Nobody can go past that. Yeah. And then suddenly their decisions around, kind of where that business goes becomes the kind of compass.
Yeah.
And ultimately, individuals sitting in the business now, I'd say that was relatively appealing to think that they could have a shot at being kind of CEO, right?
Yeah.
Running a business. Happy days.
No, I think it's great. I think also, though, for people listening, it's like there's so many different views on it. Like, that works for you.
Yeah, 100%.
It fits well with your values, purpose, all this kind of stuff. And then so that's going to guide you. For others, maybe, they might just want to earn some good money, be happy. You might not want to employ many people. You might just want 1 or 2.
Yeah, for sure.
You might be fine if they roll over a couple of years, someone else. That's also fine. So I think like it's important to do, like, think about what you're comfortable with. There isn't a one size fits all.
100%. I think the interesting thing for me is when I think about what will that business look like in 10 years, 20 years, I can sit back and see how it changes and evolves.
Yeah.
Because ultimately your thoughts on what that business could look like and where it could go is one person's view.
Yeah.
And it may have different kind of opportunities to grow in very different ways. It may not be a kind of talent acquisition business in 20 years' time. It might become something completely different.
Yeah. Mine's changed incredibly.
Yeah.
Just that, I'm coming up to year 13 now.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we're still doing recruiting, but just the way we do it, the world, the companies, what people are looking. I mean, just all the topics the stuff that we have to touch on is just changed, and we've had to evolve an awful lot.
For sure. And I think some of our very first conversations, all we talked about was values. Didn't even talk about recruitment, right? And I think that talks to how our philosophy around building a business and kind of leading people in a business, right?
Yeah.
Because the function of recruitment, the actual function, the process can be taught and people can learn.
Definitely.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff over and above and around that is unique to you and your team and how you approach it, and it's unique to my team and how we approach it, right? Yeah. And that's the real differentiator. And that's the bit that sometimes you can't explain, but people have to experience it. And I think that's where I find a lot of, like yourself, a lot of individuals that kind of come back and want to partner with us, or individuals that have perhaps gone through that process with us, and they've seen how much care and attention and kind of human-centered focus we have on individuals coming through a hiring process, and they want that for the people that they're going to then hire.
Yeah. But the lifeblood of, for want of a better word, of my business is, we're a people's business. Mm-hmm. So we're in recruiting, and our business is people. We're a people's business. Our business is people. It revolves around relationships and
100%.
And the corny bit, you see it loads now, but be patient and all this kind of stuff. Long-term game, but to your point, it's just so true in our business. Like people are in an interview process with us. They might not get a job, but they've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah.
They go somewhere. They want us to hire for them.
Yeah.
They've enjoyed how we've dealt with them. They want us to represent them. They want us to tell their story.
Definitely.
Like it just... So just be... For me, it's just being... I was never patient.
Yeah, I know.
Like, no one is. I mean, people are. But, like you start and you're just like, I want to... But things take ages. And you just got to do the right things consistently over a long period of time. And that's it, and you move in the right direction. And not everything goes your way. Nothing ever, it's not always like, go. Sometimes you're going to have a bad year. Sometimes things just...
Yeah, I think you've got to be pretty calm and pragmatic around, certainly when you're kind of working in an industry that is purely around people, right?
Yeah.
You can't make people do certain things that align to what your client wants or the process, as it were. You have to be patient. You have to. I think my one consistent question whenever we have a kind of a slightly challenging situation is why? Why has this happened?
Yeah.
Just to really think and reflect and try and understand all perspectives before just kind of concentrating so hard on, we want this outcome. That's not the purpose of that particular process. So I think it's, for me, so linking into 2023,
yeah,
I think one thing I would say to any hiring team, any hiring individual, is you need to be patient. You need to be patient, and you need to think about this as a kind of long-term, or not long-term, but it's not going to be immediate, right? So you can't just set yourself a time to hire of 6 weeks and expect that to happen. I think it's going to be hugely competitive in 2023, continue to be competitive. The brands, I think, that really think intentionally about hiring before they really need to hire are going to be the ones that probably get better hires.
Yeah.
Quite simply because they're planning ahead. They're understanding that their talent brand needs to be built. They're understanding and building in time for that kind of engagement piece, that introductory conversation, that kind of storytelling. And I think ultimately then they're probably going to be the people and businesses that are under less pressure when it comes to hiring.
Yeah.
And are probably going to be able to really see that their kind of hiring quotas fulfilled, as opposed to just having loads of outstanding recs.
Yeah. The other thing I would just add to that is, given the nature of people wanting to do freelance and gigs and stuff, you might not be hiring people like traditionally.
Yeah, 100%.
If whatever you're hiring for, think about, where do these people congregate? What are they doing? Are they in traditional employment? Do they prefer more freelance? Think about how, because your relationship with these people, they're ultimately coming to do a particular job for you. You just want to have access to as many great folks as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And it might be full-time traditional, it might be part-time, it might be a gig, it might be an agency, it might be a group of folks doing something together, So I think just think more laterally about it.
Yeah. Equally as well, if you're a leadership team, have somebody sitting at the table that actually understands hiring, right? That's actually close to the market. Because somebody turning up with a whole bunch of data to talk through is not the same as somebody turning up that's actually recruited during 2022.
Yeah.
Have somebody that can actually talk to what the market's like and actually give you a very informed view of what hiring will look like in 2023.
Yeah. Not just like, I hired like 10 people last year. Like, if there is such a thing, and I think there is, speak to someone that's in the coalface, front line of recruiting.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, with respect to kind of C-suite, kind of people, ops, HR, etc. They may have access to a lot of data, but it's not the same as actually being involved in those conversations in 2022, actually understanding what's important to people, kind of what their drivers are, what their motivations are, how long it takes, and actually experience some of the challenges of trying to get people engaged.
Yeah.
Experience that kind of that challenge, that frustration, and that joy when you do, you do get that kind of engagement and move, really great individuals into the process.
Yeah.
Have that experience, because that will come across when you're actually managing the leadership and the hiring team's expectations for 2023.
Yeah, love that. I want to end with one last thing.
Cool, man.
Compensation and benefits.
Ooh.
And the context, like a bunch of states in the US, it's illegal to ask a candidate what they're currently earning.
Yeah,
people that don't know that.
Yeah.
In New York, and I think one or two others, they now have to publish pay ranges on their job descriptions. I know we hate job descriptions, but so do you think that is a trend that will expand globally? Who cares what someone's earning right now? Or
good question, man. I think, I'm always a great believer in pay people for the job they're doing, not where they're living, first and foremost. Because I've seen it through, kind of 16 years in recruitment, where they'll be like, okay, cool, so they're not London based, so we can shave off 20% if they're living in kind of Midlands or up north, etc. My belief is pay people for the job they're doing, because you're investing in that output. I think in terms of transparency around salaries on job descriptions. I think that's a positive thing, because actually then it kind of, that transparency by an employer should hopefully kind of lend itself to a comfortable conversation around compensation with the individual that's interested in the opportunity.
Yeah.
And for me, I always approach that on, I understand that, you know, if you're moving to an opportunity, you would like an increase. I'd like to, you know, kind of explore the rationale behind that, and let's agree what your expectation is before you enter into the process, because I don't want you to be disappointed at the other end. So do I see that as a large scale trend? I don't know. I've seen a lot of startups and scale-ups adopt it, and I've seen the benefits of that. So I would like to think that it could become widely adopted. But I don't know that it will.
In the UK, yeah. I think in the US, it's like the horse has bolted. And it's, you know, what are your expectations? X, fine. Or their company will say, well, we're paying Y. Are you interested in applying or not? So there's not, so there's that. It doesn't, so for in those states, it doesn't matter what you're earning right now. You could be earning 200, the job pays 100, great, you're happy with 100, 300, you don't have to disclose. Cool. It's quite interesting. Here, you have to disclose. It's weird not to disclose. 99% of folks will disclose their current salary.
I can see the value for startups and scale-ups simply because it's just easier, because they do typically have kind of set budgets. I think if you're looking at large-scale financial services and banking companies being really transparent around salary, I can imagine that being a little bit complicated for them.
It's a hard area.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, the thing with pay ranges is who wants to get paid bottom of the range?
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to get paid bottom of the range. Everyone wants the top of the range. Or you have to really explain why you don't think this person is worth the top of the range. Well,
ultimately, if you're a large-scale financial services company, right, you're having to pay market value or market rates for an individual you're bringing in from the market.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much hedging my bets here, but I guarantee you're probably not paying market rates to the people currently sitting in that job in your business.
The longer you stay in a job, the less you get paid. Well,
exactly. Yeah, the increments become less, right? So I can see where that might be a challenge.
For scale-ups and startups, my interesting point, final point on this maybe is equity has always been a big motivator.
100%.
You know, like, and even so, you know, come take a drop in salary, or you know, you can earn like, you know, 2 million quid when we sell, and you know, our market's massive and stuff.
Yeah.
And then what we've seen recently is a lot of these firms, the money's been pulled, the IPOs haven't happened.
Yeah.
People have just got cut. So I'll be interested to see in 2023 whether candidates are going to be much more savvy or less willing to get sucked into the equity piece to sacrifice cash now. That's
a really good point, man. Really good point. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out, because it's still sold as a genuine upside and real benefit. But again, you're taking, or you're thinking about a long-term outcome as opposed to anything immediate. So, yeah, good point. TBC. Really good point. TBC indeed.
Glenn, thank you for joining me again.
Oh, Lewis, always a pleasure.
Loved it. And we'll do more in person.
100%. Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much.
Loved it.
See y'all.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please do not forget to subscribe in all the usual places. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you like to watch or listen to a podcast. Any comments or feedback, please drop us a DM. If you've got anything that you want us to discuss, again, feel free to get in touch.